Hi everyone, Kevin from Coding Pals here, and today we're going to be looking at the 2019 J3 from the CCC competition, Code Compress. So, your new cell phone plan charges you for every character you send from your phone. Since you tend to send sequences of symbols in your messages, you have come up with the following compression technique. For each symbol, write down the number of times it appears consecutively, followed by the symbol itself. This compression technique is called run length encoding. More formally, a block is a substring of identical symbols that is as long as possible. A block will be represented in compressed form as the length of the block followed by the symbol in that block. The encoding of a string is the representation of each block in the string in the order in which they appear in the string. Given the sequence of characters, write a program to encode them in this format. So, let's look at the input specification. The first line of input will be a number n, which is the number of lines to follow. The next n lines will contain at least 1 and at most 80 characters, none of which are spaces. For our output specification, the output will be n lines. Line I of the output will be the encoding of the line I plus 1 of the input. The encoding of a line will be a sequence of pairs separated by a space, where each pair is an integer, representing the number of times the character appears consecutively, followed by a space, followed by the character. Alright, let's see how we would solve this. So, my thought process is that we first come with a way to encode one line of string, and then we can use a for loop to run it for the necessary number of times. So the first thing we do is we take in our first line of input, and we set it to be this variable x. Then we create this blank list where we will store all of our next lines of input. So we use this for loop x, and then we set this variable t to be equal to wherever is the next input, and then we will append this t to this list A. So at the end, our list A has all of our lines of input stored as separate elements. So next we use a for loop in order to run through each element in our list of A. So we set n to be equal to the ith element of this list A, and then we set this blank space of D. So what D is basically a blank string, and it's what we're going to use to store like the compressed version of the string. And then P is a counter, which we're going to use to count how many times each symbol consecutively occurs in a row. So next we use a for loop in order to run through every single character in each element. So, and then now the reason we're adding this if I does not equal to length n minus 1 is because we're trying to test if the ith character is equal to the ith plus 1 character. And so once we reach like the last character, the length, once it's equal to the length, we're going to reach the last character, and then I plus 1 will give us an L of range error. So that's why we're doing this. And then the next step is just comparing if the ith character is the same as the I plus 1th character. And if it is the same, we add 1 to our counter. And otherwise, once it breaks out of this like consecutiveness, we add it to our string D. So we add this space because it's required in the output specification. Then we convert our integer p into a string, and then we add it in. And the reason we're saying p plus 1 is because the way that our code runs, it doesn't count the initial one. So for example, if we look at this line of code right here, it will first test if the first plus sign is the same as the second plus sign, and if it is, then it will add 1 to p. Then we'll test if the second plus sign is the same as the third plus sign, and it is, so it will add another 1 to p. But then it never actually, but then even though there are 3 plus signs, it only adds 2 because it never counts the initial plus sign. So that's why we have to use p plus 1. And then we add another space, and then we just add in our character. And then we reset p to 0 because we're going to count another symbol now. And after this is all done, we can just print out what we get. Now, and the reason we're splicing our D is because the first time that D runs for each of the elements, D is a blank string. So if we don't do this, there will just be a space in front of like all of these outputs, and then our output specification doesn't state there should be a space in front of it, which is why we're splicing it out. Alright, now we just submit. And yeah, we're done.